Cuba cracks down on protests by its citizens as they are upset about the recent surge in COVID cases. But most importantly, they're kind of tired of being ruled over by a authoritarian regime. So thousands of demonstrators and activists took to the streets, and at least 80 were arrested across 15 different cities in Cuba. And the president of Cuba is trying to blame U.S. embargoes for the cause, for the economic strife, because they are facing one of the worst economic crises in over 30 years. This includes food, fuel, and medicine shortages, rolling blackouts, and a large number of surging COVID cases. So if you see that in the news, that was kind of like the feather that broke the camel's back was, more people getting sick, but that's not the main driver of what's happening here. A lot of people that were arrested were dissidents and civil rights activists who were calling for freedom and end to President Miguel Diax, Diax, to an end to the President Miguel's reign here. He's been going for the communist government here has been around for about the last 6 decades, roughly, and he took over in 2018. And they said in the article that they had everybody out there from plainclothed police officers to Communist Party militants with quote unquote hefty sticks. So they were just beating people with sticks, whatever they could to quell the protesters. And the government has vowed that they will not yield to the protesters' demands. They will have to go over our dead body if they want to overturn the revolution, Mr. Díaz Canel said. So there is definitely going to be a flashpoint here. These demonstrations are calling for freedom and an end to the communist regime, and they don't want to have to leave Cuba to do it. They don't want to have to go to the United States and get on rafts or try to immigrate somewhere else. They want their country to be open and free. They feel that their government has been very restrictive to them. And the question is, can the people handle what's going to happen next? This is unprecedented for Cuba, given how severe the government is in cracking down on dissidents. And then people just took to the streets. Like they didn't care about what happened to them because they're finally fed up. And like, we're just going to let the world know. And this is really a good example of a function of the internet at work and people being able to communicate and finally realize, like, everybody else here, we're all on the same page. Like, there is other ways to live life. Like, this isn't working. We have something to say about that. So, and something interesting here is that the Freedom House, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to promoting freedom and democracy, reports that freedom across the globe has declined for 15 straight years, a trend that accelerated last year. I have no idea how they are rating that. I imagine it must be something to do with population density versus leadership versus government types in countries, something like that. But the point is that it's actually interesting when you look at it, because you're seeing a lot of the bigger influential countries in the world actually moving further away from democratic processes, even though maybe their citizens are calling for it and trying to lock down onto their own different types of government and move forward with their programs and regimes. Such as in Iran, the Ayatollah has been in power for about 32 years straight, and Russia, Vladimir Putin's been the president and PM for about 22 years, trying to approach Stalin's record, which was 29 years of leading. So that's going to be interesting to see. Critics and analysts alike both think that Vladimir Putin will be alive to see that through. And in China, Xi Jinping has been in power for only 9 years, but he removed term limits, and he basically has a cult following of political entities that are basically willing to vote him in and do whatever that he needs to do. So we'll probably see him around for a while as well. So really, what this is being viewed as kind of like another big moment of people wanting democracy, people wanting to not be controlled or ruled anymore, being upset with their government and saying, like, we want a different way. We want to try something different. This isn't working and we don't like it. We don't think you can solve the problems of our country. We think you're only going to make them worse, and we want to take our country back. So we'll definitely be watching to see what happens, but definitely something that we should know about, since Cuba is just right off Florida, is a very, very large communist regime. So definitely some interesting news today coming out of Cuba.
Yeah, well, I hope. I don't know. I was watching the show Startup, and I feel like they're still. I'm not sure if they've come up to the 20th century, but I know they're pretty delayed in their technology.
Right, and some people believe that what might happen here is that the Cuba's government may restrict certain internet access and may limit the ability of them to communicate and for people to communicate outside of Cuba, and may be cracking down on that as well. So, but then again, that's the thing, when you're going to find, except for like exception of really China, because China's a little bit different. They've kind of done a more hybrid style model here. But for most authoritarian governments, you generally don't see large advances in technology because that coincides with with the amount of power within those companies or entities, as well as more freedoms and spread of communication from the citizens, which generally doesn't work in your favor because if you're trying to maintain control, if people don't love you because they think you're a great leader, then you can only control by power and fear. And if you find a way to kind of backdoor that and let people learn about the rest of the world and learn the truth and have that voice, you start to wither away at that power. So,
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Well, good luck to Cuba.
Good luck. Good luck to Cuba.
Yeah.
Biden has sided with the protesters as well. So, I don't know if there'll ever be any kind of U.S. involvement in that.
I mean,
we'll
at this point, it's just holding back their whole country. They're holding back everything from getting further in technology to when people even started going over there during the times where vacation was allowed from the U.S. into Cuba. Well, they ran out of resources pretty quickly. So,
right. Yeah, Cuba's been a communist regime for a while since the Castro brothers. So we'll see how it goes. But apparently, as I said, the government's not bending. Will not give in to the protesters. They'll have to take it back over their dead bodies. So I imagine it will not be, if there is a transfer of power and these protests turn into something more conclusive, I don't think it'll be peaceful, or in both ways. I don't think it'll be peaceful in the protesters being quelled either. So definitely gonna hopefully not see any more violent news out of there, but I imagine we'll see some more stories about Cuba. So if you see Cuba in the news, that's what's going on.
Okay.